Okay, Rabotai, we are on Daf Zayin Amud Bet. Zayin Amud Aleph 7A2. Okay? Now, the thing I want to recap before we move forward is the line that Esther said to the people. Esther said to the rabbis. Esther sent a message back on 7A1. Let's just go back and read that again. Bottom of 7A1. Shalcha lahem le'Esther le'chachamim. Esther said to the chachamim, Kitvuni ledorod, write me for the generations. Shalchu la, they said, remember, earlier she said, Keva'uni ledorod. There she was asking to be part of her, she wanted the process of Purim to be instituted, so the mitzvot. Here she's asking to actually have the Megillah become part of the writings of the Tanakh. Shalcha lehem Esther l'chachamim, kitvuni ledorot. Shalchu la, they sent her back. Halo katavti lach shalishim. I already wrote you 3 times. Shalishim, 3, v'lo ribaim, and not 4. Why? Ad shematz'u la mikra shekatuv b'Torah, until they found the pasuk that said in the Torah, ketov zot zikaron b'sefer, ketov zot, ma shekatuv kan, u'b'mishneh Torah, what is written here, and in Mishneh Torah, so you have in Shemot, and you have in Devarim, zikaron ma shekatuv b'neviim, b'sefer, ma shekatuv Megillah. So they categorized each word as independent, ketov, zot, zikaron, b'sefer. If you have 4 instances, then you can't only write about Amalek 3 times, you can write about Amalek 4 times. So Ketov 1, Zot 2, Zikaron 3, Basefer 4. The other side of this says different. No, Kitanai, there was a machloket Tanaim. Ketov Zot, Mashakatuv Kan, the first opinion in the Braita says Ketov Zot, which means both of those statements are counting as one. Mashakatuv Kan, Shemot. Zikaron, Mashakatuv b'Mishneh Torah in Devarim. Basefer, Mashakatuv b'Neviim. That's it, no more. So according to that Tanah, they were not able to write it in as part of Tanakh. Dibrei Rabbi Yoshua. This is Rabbi Yoshua says. Rabbi Eliezer Amodai says, Ketov Zot, Mashakatuv Kan b'Mishneh Torah. Ketov Zot means this and this, right? And then Zikaron and Basefer are separate, and that allowed for Mashakatuv ba Megillah. Now that we understand that there are 2 different opinions about the writing of of Amalek, of the story of Purim as canonized as part of the 24 books. Let's continue. Amar Yehuda Mashmuel. Yehuda says in the name of Shmuel, Esther ena mitamet hayadayim. The Megillat Esther does not make impure. Now this is wild. However, there was a gizerah that they made a gizerah that anyone that touches the actual scroll of one of the books of Tanakh, then their hand should become impure. Why? We'll see in just a minute. Okay? However, the Gemara says, Esther eno mitamet hayadayim. Esther is not part of this group of books, and therefore it's not mitamei hayadayim. Lememra, says the Gemara, does that mean to say that he made this distinction based on the fact that it wasn't divinely inspired, it wasn't divinely written? Shmuel himself, the person that you just said, told me, Amar Shmuel, that it's not mitamei hadayim, your hands are not impure with regards to eating teruma, right? He himself wrote that it was written Beruach HaKodesh. So there's no room to make a distinction between this book and the other books. The Gemara answers, Ne'emra likrot, yes, it was said Beruach HaKodesh, but it was said likrot in order for a person to be able to recite, in order to be able to say. However, velo ne'emra lichtov, it was not written down, it was not said with divine inspiration to the point or for the purpose of being written down in a book. And since that's the case, someone reply on WhatsApp that he should keep knocking at the front door. Okay, security is here. And it wasn't intended in that way to be part of the Chaf Dalet Sefarim. So the Gemara now asks, what's going on over here? Metvei. So in other words, everyone understand so far? Yeah. So therefore, the reason why it's not mitameh is not because it was written on a lower level of divine inspiration, but rather that there could be things that were said with divine inspiration, but they're not intended to be part of the Chaf Dalet Sefarim. The Gemara continues. Mitvei, it says a question. Rabbi Meir, Omer Meir says, now this is not easy to follow. Rabbi Meir, Omer Rabbi Meir says, Kohelet eno mitameh adayim. Kohelet, the book of Kohelet is not mitameh adayim. Umachloket, the machloket, there's a disagreement b'shir hashirim with regards to shir hashirim. The second opinion, Rabbi Yossi Omer, Rabbi Yossi says, shir hashirim mitameh adayim. So the first one says, Kohelet not, shir hashirim maybe. The second opinion, Rabbi Yossi says, shir hashirim mitameh, for sure is mitameh, umachloket b'kohelet. There's a machloket on Kohelet. But notice, what did he not put in there? Megillah. First two, therefore did not say Megillah. The Gemara continues, Rabbi Shimon Omer, Kohelet mikule bet Shammai umichumre bet Hillel. Hold on, he goes, let's be clear. When I just mentioned to you there was a machloket, that's the machloket bet Shammai bet Hillel. However, in almost every instance, bet Shammai is more strict, bet Hillel is more lenient. But Kohelet is mikule bet Shammai. Bet Shammai held it was mutar, and Bet Hillel said it was tameh. So you have Bet Hillel uncharacteristically being the more lenient opinion. Someone once said Bet Hillel was white hat, Bet Shammai was black hat. Incorrect. Being lenient in halakha is not a matter about being more religious. In many cases, actually, the Gemara says it requires more knowledge to be able, koach de hetera adif, requires more knowledge in order to be able to be lenient. So that is an incorrect assessment and or statement, right? It's nothing to do with religion, nothing to do with how strict you are. It's about knowledge, how knowledgeable a person is, and are they able to do it in a way where they're respecting the halakha, but at the same time finding room to be able to allow for something. Aval, so Rabbi Shimon says, Kohelet, we have this machloket, Aval Rut, V'shir hashirim, Ve'ester, Rut, Shir hashirim, and Esther, mitameh yadayim. Or those all are mitameh yadayim. They all, what's it called? Make a person's hands impure. So, what comes out of this is, there's not a single opinion in this Mishnah, not one, that said that Esther is not mitameh yadayim. We had an opinion that we started with, Kohelet is not mitameh. We had a second opinion that says, and a machloket on Shir hashirim. We had a second opinion that said, Shir hashirim for sure, yes, machloket and Kohelet, okay? Fine. We have a third opinion that says, Kohelet, machloket, flip Bet Shammai, Bet Hillel in terms of what they would normally say, but Rut, Shir hashirim, and Esther, all mitameh. Which means that in every instance, everybody held that when it came to Esther, what would be the halakha? Mitameh yadayim. So how could Shemuel say it? There's not a single opinion in the Tanaim that would render it not tameh. Gemara answers, Hada Amar Kirbi Yoshua. You just brought me three opinions that say that it's not, that it's mitameh yadayim because it's part of the 24 books. Huda Amar Kirbi Yoshua. He holds like Kirbi Yoshua that we said earlier. Then we had the two braitas, the two opinions in the braita. One opinion said that there's only three mentions of Amalek allowed because Ketov Zot is one, Zikaron two, Basefer three. That was Rabbi Yoshua. Which means if there's no fourth opportunity to write down in the writings about Esther, that means that fourth opinion, that fourth occurrence is not part of the 24 books. So that's Shemuel's mentor, Ya'ani, and the protectorate in the Tanaic times. He's going according to Rabbi Yoshua. Now, let's hit pause here. What in the world is going on? You have something that's holy. Why is it mitameh yadayim? And the answer is that there are two elements to this gezerah. One element is that people were treating these holy sefarim, they were treating it with less than the right amount of respect. Okay? And therefore, in order to make sure that they were handled less, we knew that if we made a person's tameh yadayim, then he has to go and then wash his hands, he would treat the scrolls with more respect. So this paradoxical understanding that if you touch something, it's holy, it's going to make you impure, and because of that, that would make sure that the scrolls themselves would stay more protected. Wild, isn't it?
Makes sense.
Sorry?
You said that, or the Gemara says that Megillah Esther is mitameh yadayim. So if I wash my hands before I touch megillah instead. My hands are clean, but I'm becoming tameh.
Correct. What are you saying?
So you said that it would somehow make the scroll or the megillah more important, more holy.
No, it would make sure that people wouldn't randomly touch it for no reason. Because since it now requires you to go wash your hands, if I don't need to touch it, I'm not going to touch it. If I have to touch it, I'm going to touch it. But people were just treating them with their hands. And by the way, it's a material. No, not only Esther. So I'm gonna review just 1 minute because you missed the beginning, which is it's a weird thing. We have a takana that says that they instituted tum'ah when you touch any of the 24 books. So it doesn't mean that you're tameh, you have to go to the mikveh. But with regards to eating terumah, you needed to now go purify your hands before you ate something. People were handling the books without the proper respect, and they were handling them too much. So since that was the case, what did we do to protect the books from being worn out? We instituted something that would mean that people would touch them less. It's just in order to have them touched less. That's the first opinion. The second opinion, why they made this gezerah, was because people were worried that their tirumah would become not tameh. They thought to themselves, where's my tirumah going to be safe? There's a vault right over there where the books are. And they're holy. They started putting tirumah is when you have a fruits or whatever, you have to then take some of that fruit or some of that and take it apart. That's for tirumah. Okay, you have to allocate it for the kohen. Depends. There's trumah, there's maaser, but they were taking these foods that had to be eaten. They were holy. They had to be eaten in a state of holiness, right? You could only eat tirumah if you're holy. So they didn't want it to become tameh. They didn't want anyone touching their ekel. So what did they do? They put their ekel with the bread, with the scrolls, and they figured no one will eat it there. What's the problem? Who came to visit the food now? The mice come. Now you've introduced mice into the Aron Kodesh. And what did the mice do? The mice ruined the Sfarim. So we came up with this gezerah in order to be able, again, paradoxically, in order to be able to protect the holy books. Okay? Now the Gemara says that that's true about the 24 books, the books of Tanakh. The question is that also true about the book of Esther? So the Gemara went through, Shemuel said it's not, Esther is precluded from this. Right? A lot of reasons why one would imagine that to be the case. The first, the Gemara thought the reason was because Shemuel underestimated its divine inspiration. The Gemara says, but Shemuel himself is the one that says that it was written with divine inspiration. So if that's the case, right? If that's the case, so then what could the reason possibly be? So we brought that he says from Rabbi Yoshua that it was never intended to be one of the Sefarim, one of the 24 books, and that would be the exclusion. There are other logical reasons as well. Megillah was something that many people had, and it wasn't stored in the thing with the other Sefarim, right? As an example, how many people you know have a Megillah? Fair amount. Do you know one guy that has a Megillat root?
No.
Do you know one guy that has a Divrei HaYamim? Not one I get, right? By the way, if you have that, that's you're dope because nobody else. I thought I'd get myself. I have the Ketoret already, you know. So I thought maybe I'll go Majlu and get Yehoshua. Okay, so nobody has it. So there was less of a chance of that happening with regards to Megillat Esther because people would take it to themselves. They would bring it to their own homes, and they didn't have in their own homes the safe rule of the Sfarim. So therefore, they didn't need to make it. By the way, do we have this idea? How could the Chachamim do that? How could they take something that's holy and make something not holy? Nailed it. We have precedent. Paraduma is something which is holy, and what happens to the Kohen that use it? It becomes tameh. So it's not that we learn it from Paraduma. But if you would think, oh, that's just a disrespectful thing for the Chachamim to do, the answer is, it's not disrespectful. There was an origin source where you could see that doesn't mean that it lessens the Kedusha of the item by saying that you need to become Tameh.
So it's a mechanism.
It's a mechanism to protect the books. Okay? Says the Gemara, Tanya was taught in the Braita. Rabbi Shimon ben Menashe Omer. Shimon ben Menashe used to say, Kohelet ina metameh et hayadayim. Kohelet does not make someone's hands impure. It was all written about, right? It's if you read the very first pasuk, he's telling you his own wisdom. Amar Kohelet. He keeps saying, Kohelet says, Kohelet knows. So, and he's referring to himself. So Shlomo HaMelech wrote Kohelet, and since it was the wisdom of Shlomo, but not from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, therefore, Amru lo, they said to him, B'chizu bilvad amar, but is that all that Shlomo wrote? What are you talking about? V'alo kvar ne'emar, doesn't it already say? V'yedaber 3,000 mashal, right? He gave 3,000 mishalim, 3,000 examples, okay? Ve'omer al tosef al devarav, and he added onto this that you're not allowed to say, he wrote in the book itself that you're not allowed to add any more to these works. So the Gemara says, one second, if you're telling me that Kohelet was written, and this is only Shlomo's wisdom, we know that Shlomo brought 3,000 different mishalim, and those are not recorded in Kohelet. Why did he decide that these should be in Kohelet? It must be that the ones that were recorded in Kohelet were not ones that came from his own personal wisdom bank, but rather those are the ones that came from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that were divinely inspired, and therefore, that's why they made the cut into Kohelet. And we prove that point from the fact that Shlomo said, Al Tosef Al Devarav, you can't add, indicating that these ones that have been written and that were already in, past the finish line, Ya'ani, were distinctively different than the others. The Gemara says, Mai ve'omer, what does this Braita mean when it says, after it tells you the first proof of the 3,000 versus what we got in Kohelet, Mai ve'omer, what do we, what's extra that we learn from that? Gemara answers, V'chitema, maybe you'll say, Memar Tuva Amar, it is true that Shlomo HaMelech, he did these 3,000, the Ibai Ichtiv, but the ones that he wanted to write in Kohelet, he wrote. With Ibai, Lo Ichtiv. It's true, he made up many more, but the reason why he put these in, because these ones he liked. These were the highlights, these were the, what's it called? The highlight reel. Tashema. So if that's what you thought, Tashema al tosef al devarav. If those are the ones that you wanted, you wouldn't institute also like a negative commandment, if you will. Don't add on to these. Like, what difference would it make? It's just a random group that you happen to like.
What does it say al tosef al devarav?
In Kohelet, it says al tosef al devarav. So look at the side, you'll see it, right? Number 4, Al Tosef Al Devarav, Pen Yochiach Becha V'Nichzavta. Pasuk in Mishle.
Is that the halakha that we don't add on to something?
No, that's similar. That's in that pasuk you're talking about is in the Torah itself. Lo Tosifu V'Lo Tigraun Mimenu. It's called Bal Tosif uBal Tigra. Okay, you're not allowed to add and you're not allowed to take away. That's a pasuk in the Torah. Okay, but here that's about adding mitzvot. Where do we know that Shlomo HaMelech was saying, what I wrote, nothing else? Here he's saying, Al Tosef, indicating that it was specifically these that are in and not any other ones. And that's not just a matter of personal preference, because if it was, he wouldn't have said Al Tosef. So therefore the Gemara says, Al Tosef, and that proves the point that these are unique. And if that's the case, so then we know that Kohelet is also written, is also divinely inspired. So again, the first opinion said, Rabbi Shimon ben Menasya said, it's not mitamei yadayim. Amru lo, all the other Rabbanim disagreed with Rabbi Shimon ben Menasya. Number 1, because of the reason. Number 2, because of the pasuk of Al Tosef. Now, let's continue. The Gemara now is going to...
So it doesn't make your hands dirty, or it does?
Which one?
Kohelet.
So we indicated, right? Remember we had a machloket?
Yeah.
Rabbi Meir says, eno mitameh. First opinion, no. Second opinion, so Rabbi Meir would be like Rabbi Shimon ben Menasya. Second opinion, Rabbi Shimon says, Kohelet machloket. So Rabbi Hillel says, Bet Hillel says, Tameh, right? Bet Shammai says, not Tameh. And the last opinion, right? The last opinion holds, sorry, I skipped one. The first opinion, sorry, Rabbi Meir says, Eno mitameh. Second opinion, Rabbi Yossi says, Machloket beKohelet, and the third opinion, Rabbi Shimon, is also Kohelet mikule bet. So in both instances, Kohelet is a machloket in the second 2 opinions. In the first opinion, Kohelet eno metame. So this opinion of Rabbi Shimon ben Menasya is either going like Rabbi Meir or it's going like Bet Shammai. Okay? The Gemara then disagreed with him, the Rabbanim, and that would illustrate that is how we hold. The Gemara now continues, and it's now going to illustrate exactly this concept of Shmuel that we mentioned earlier. Tanya Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Esther Ruach HaKodesh Nemra. Esther was all said Ruach HaKodesh. Shene'emar, Vayomer Haman bilibo. In the Pesukim in Esther, it says, and Haman said in his heart. How in the world would we know what Haman said in his heart? It tells you the narrative of his innermost feelings. Who told the author of the Megillah what Haman was thinking?
Hashem.
Only if it's divinely inspired could that have been written. Rabbi Akiva says, Esther Ruach HaKodesh Nemra. It was said Ruach HaKodesh. Shene'emar, Vatihi Esther nosat chen b'nei kol ro'ea. And Esther found favor, okay, in the eyes of everybody that saw her. Now, if you say Esther was a charismatic person and people liked her, that's one thing. But to be able to say b'nei kol ro'ea, who would know that there was one person that don't like the queen? Today, it's very fashionable to bash the royals in England. But that's at a time where bashing the royals doesn't get your head chopped off. Back then, you said you don't really care for Esther or for the queen. What happens? You say goodbye to your head. You get an esav done on you. Okay. Says the Gemara. Rabbi Meir Omer. Rabbi Meir says, Baruch HaKodesh Ne'emra. Esther Baruch HaKodesh Ne'emra. It was said Baruch HaKodesh Ne'emar v'yivada davar leMordechai. And the pasuk says, and the thing, what is the thing became known to Mordechai? The story of Bigtan Vateresh. So in the story of Bigtan Vateresh, the pasuk says, vayivada hadavar leMordechai. And the thing became known to Mordechai. How would we have known? How could that have happened? Right? Unless there was an element here of Ruach HaKodesh. Now, I must say, this is a strange thing. The first two proofs was about the authorship.
About what?
The authorship of Megillat Esther. Because how could the guy know what everyone felt about Esther? Only Hashem would know that. Okay? The first point was Haman, and Haman said his heart. The author could not have known that unless he knew what was going on in the hearts and mind, right? The shadow. Nobody knows that. Nobody's old enough.
No, not necessarily.
Old school.
Old school, that's radio. Okay. The shadow. Who knows? Yes. What evil lurks in the hearts of men? Okay, fine. Let's move on. Rabotai. So, the first two of them are about the person who wrote the book. So the book must have been written with Ruach HaKodesh, because otherwise, how could the author have known that? Now we come to the third one. Vayivada davar leMordechai. You know how the author knew that? Because Mordechai told Esther.
Who's the author?
Yeah, who's the author?
It must have been, let's say it's Esther.
They're trying to say that they
Let's say it's Esther. But the point is that the author was divinely inspired. Because the author could not have known that.
Why they're saying that the book was written before the event?
No. That when they wrote the book, they were given Ruach HaKodesh to be able to write it in exactly the right way. In the way that Hashem wanted it to be written.
Okay.
Word for word.
So you're saying like how did Mordechai know? Because
So the
he
first-
wasn't there narrating the book.
The first two made no sense. The last one, Vayivada davar leMordechai, what do you mean? If you're the author trying to write this down, obviously the thing became known to Mordechai. Otherwise, how did he tell it to Esther? Or, alternatively, Mordechai was part of the ones that wrote the book.
Yeah.
So here it's different. Here what we're saying is, how in the world did it happen that Mordechai happened to overhear the plot to assassinate the king? That happened because of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's hands in the event. That has nothing to do with the authorship of the book. That just has to do with HaKadosh Baruch Hu guiding the story to the direction that he wants it to happen. What are the chances that an elderly woman who looks tinted green, right, gets picked out of all the maidens in the kingdom to be the queen?
I don't understand tinted green.
She had a greenish pallor.
I don't know what that means.
Greenish.
Like she looked like a lizard.
No, not like a lizard. Okay.
No, the eyes,
But
the eyes,
have you ever seen someone that's yellow?
Olive skin, you mean? Olive.
No, green.
No, like
Green.
What-
It
so
says
why is it
green.
attractive?
It's not. That's what I'm saying. It's a miracle. He takes this woman. It says that she's over 60 years old. This is who he's choosing.
Where does it all say this?
We're going to come to some of it.
Wait, it says that
And
green is over 60.
60.
Wait, the green in the 60s not in the Megillah?
This is where the term lounge lizard came from. Okay? So Esther was not an ideal pick.
Yifatoad Mar'eh, where would they say
Yeah,
it?
It doesn't say that in the
Doesn't it say that? It says it in the
Yes.
Megillah?
Yes, it says in the Megillah. It doesn't say
It talks about her beauty.
It doesn't say that meant that she was a young spring chicken. Just that she was beautiful. You could have a 60-year-old that's beautiful. She's beautiful for a 60-year-old.
Did they say they brought all the young maidens to...
That's my point. So the guy could choose from a 20-year-old supermodel.
Yeah.
By the way, never been married before. And he chooses, according to many opinions, Esther was married. He's choosing someone's leftovers. It's over 60, greenish... Come on.
You're throwing us for a loop.
Okay.
We want to
No
get
one
to
knows.
that.
Well, you imagine that she's walking in Miss Universe, right? That's not what it was.
Hold on. We've been doing Megillah Esther our whole lives, and now we're finding out that she's a green lizard.
Who's 60?
She's not a lizard.
Who was married before?
She's not a lizard.
nice.
The Gemara, we're going to see, the Gemara says that she was for him lebat. And one opinion says lebayit, which, again, she was his home. She was Mordechai's home. That's also part of the incredible connection between Mordechai and Esther. He's devastated. He can't leave her alone. This is his wife that's been taken to the palace. Everybody doesn't understand this about the whole story of Megillah. Megillah is one of the most tragic stories. Here's a tzaddik taken by this, uncouth Rasha Mirusha who's raping this tzaddik. That's what's really going on here. So it's not a really happy story, as far as she's concerned.
Raping her wife.
Because she doesn't want to go. They're taking these women against their will. That is this story. It's like, it seems so magical, but if you actually get into the shoes of it, she doesn't want to go. She hides as long as she can until they discover her.
When they say in the Megillah,
I thought it
Teaching-
was like a ball, like, oh, let's go meet the king.
No, the only woman that did not want to be the queen of Persia is the woman that gets chosen to be the queen of Persia.
when they say that she went at night and then left the next day,
One of the opinions
Wait,
is...
say that
That
again,
was the-
Mars? I didn't
No,
know.
so those women, Baboker, in the evening she would go, that refers to Achashverosh would sleep with every single contestant.
that's what I thought.
By the way, if he lived, he would totally be canceled, this guy.
We'll change it.
Had that, Jeffrey Epstein's got nothing on Achashverosh. Okay? This guy is crazy. It's with all the women in the kingdom. Baboker he bow, ba'erev he bow, baboker he shava. And by the way, once she's with the king, even if the king doesn't choose her, she stays in his harem for life.
What is
Because
that?
now she stays as part of his... No, it was optional rotation.
He took the whole kingdom.
Whether he wants.
No G's left.
No, do you think they only chose the nice ones?
And the lizard.
So how'd they choose her?
That's
divine-
my point.
That's the
This was a
divine
miracle.
inspiration.
That's part of the miracle.
It's,
Okay? Yeah? Now, my friends, we have to stop calling her a lizard. It's a
By the
disaster.
way, imagine telling all the little girls that wear the Queen Esther costumes.
Lizards now.
Oh, you didn't tell me.
Need a new
We should just get green spray paint when they walk in. Okay, let's move on.
Costume next year.
Vashti was drop dead gorgeous.
That's what I heard.
Yeah, it doesn't say about Esther what it says about Vashti. Vashti was the most beautiful woman in all of the kingdom. So much so that when she walked, it says that they all were claiming it's such like a whole crazy thing. And then later on, when Esther finds favor in everybody's eyes, then all the people also see her as beautiful. Again,
what's
that's
the Vashti pimple thing again. What's going
That's a made-up thing.
no, not a made up thing. Not a made up thing. We'll get there. Okay,
I love that.
we'll get everywhere. We'll get there. Let's go.
It's just like Dateline Esther.
That's not the Megillah.
Okay, let's go.
What really happened?
Okay, all right. Yeah, Amy. Okay.
You get to washing your hands before you pick up.
Rabotai, okay, calm
It
down.
doesn't say that Vashti was killed in the Megillah.
What do you mean?
It doesn't say she was killed.
Yeah, no, it says that's what's
Says
going to
the-
happen. This is
the
what you should
sages,
do. Memuchan tells him, kill her.
Does he? I thought he
Yeah.
says you can't have someone disrespect you.
Yes, but that means
didn't say kill.
that means kill her. No, he kills her. Yeah.
No, I know he kills her, but it doesn't say that
Esther
literally.
eventually died by the hand.
No.
Vashti. Okay. My friends, I'm going to ask you for a little bit of maturity from now, okay? That's all right? From this point, because we're about to go down the rabbit hole, okay? So again, I just wanted to point out that this piece here that we just learned is different than the pieces that came before it. The first two pieces that Beruach HaKodesh Ne'emra is about the authorship. This Ruach HaKodesh doesn't do with the authorship. It's just about the fact that it happened Bichlal. And we'll see exactly what was that miracle that Mordechai was able to hear, overhear what happened.
Out the Ruach HaKodesh
in the story. But that is, so I'm saying that has nothing to do with the authorship of it.
Well,
okay.
So is that Mordechai
is the author?
No, just pointing out that there is
regardless of who's the author, there's no proof from Vayivadah Hadavar that there's divine, that there's Ruach HaKodesh in the authorship of Megillat Esther.
So is there any way we would have known that Hashverosh asked for his book at night if it wasn't a Ruach HaKodesh thing?
Yes.
Did he tell anyone that I asked for my book?
Well, I imagine when Mordechai gets brought to the palace and told this is what's going to happen, so Achashverosh tells him, I was reading last night in the book of memories, and etc., etc. Okay. Says the Gemara. Okay, Rabbi Yossi ben Durmaskis. Rabbi Yossi, the son of Durmaskis, says, Esther beruach hakodesh ne'emra. Esther was said with ruach hakodesh ne'emar, u'babizah lo shalchu et yadam. They did not touch any of the spoils of the war. How could anyone who's authoring this book know that in 0 cases throughout all the kingdoms of Persia, when they took revenge against their enemies, that they didn't touch any of the spoils? How would the author know that? The answer is, it was written by Ruach HaKodesh. So again, the last example, again, goes back to a proof with regards to the authorship, as opposed to, what's it called? Okay. The Gemara continues. Amar Shmuel, if I was there at the time, Hava Amina Milta Da, Difi Mikulu. If I was there at the time, this is, by the way, big shoulders to say this.
Yeah.
If I was there at the time when they were having this conversation, I would have said something that was better than anything that any of them said. Shneimar, because it says, Kimu v'kiblu. Kimu lemala, mashikiblu lemata. When it says, Kimu v'kiblu ha'yehudim, the Jews stood up and accepted. What does it mean, Kimu v'kiblu? They kept and they kept and they accepted. You could have just said Kiblu.
This is at the time of the Torah?
No, this is at the time of at the end of the Megillah. The Jewish people Kimu, they kept the Kiblu, and they accepted on themselves all of the, So the Gemara says, Shmuel says, what does that mean? Kimu, they kept lemala, mashikiblu lemata, what they had done down here on earth. So since that was the case, that mina shamayim, they accepted this idea, okay? So they would not have been able to say that we could testify that in shamayim they're agreeing to our process and to our institution of this holiday. So therefore, that's a proof that, what's it called? Now, no disrespect to Shmuel, who seemingly is maybe disrespecting the Tanaim, saying that my approach is better than all of them. Their approaches are in the words of the Megillah itself. His approach is based on the drasha of Kimu v'Kibelu. So I don't know if his would be better than theirs, because Kimu v'Kibelu, in Shmuel's instance, is on a drasha. You could have read the words Kimu v'Kibelu is referring just to the Jews. Forget the Shammai. Okay? That's why the Tanaim, each one chose something in the book that proved that that person had to know, what was going on behind closed doors, and that could only be HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, now, the Gemara is going to say the opposite of what I just said. Amar Rava says, Lekulu, for all of these, Itlau Pircha, we could knock out, Lebar, Mede Shemuel, except for Shemuel, the Letle Pircha, where there's no knocking out. Let's explain. Rabbi Eliezer says, what Rabbi Eliezer said, what did he say? Right? He said, the first explanation was, Vayomer Haman bilibo. Now, the Gemara says, that's a svara. What the author is saying is, if Haman's response to the king is, dress up the guy in the clothing of the king, in the crown of the king, riding the horse of the king. Why would he say that if he knew it was Mordechai? The answer is, Haman must have been thinking in his heart that it was himself, and that's why he made that suggestion. Okay? So one could have, the author could just be taking literary license and making an assumption. Okay? The Gemara continues, because like he said in his heart monologue, who could the king want to honor more than me? Because actually, who was the king's most honored person? Haman. So it actually made sense. Svara. V'haiki kama pishtuva. Ve'amar adate denafsheka amar. And the fact that he went to such extremes with asking for literally everything that the king uses himself illustrates that it was dafka for himself. The Rabbi Akiva, the Gemara brought Rabbi Akiva, the Mishnah brought Rabbi Akiva. Excuse me, the Braita. That said that Esther was nosat chen b'nei kol ro'ea. Everyone loved her. Dilmak Rabbi Elazar. Maybe Rabbi Akiva is following the opinion of Rabbi Elazar. Da'amar melamed shekol echad ve'echad nidmeta lo ke'umato. That Rabbi Elazar says that whenever Esther came, everyone said, "Oh, she's from my country. She comes from Deal." No, she's from Brooklyn. No, she's from the city. Yeah. Everybody wanted to lay claim to Esther because Esther never revealed her origin. She never told anyone where she was born, which people she was from. So this mystery allowed for everyone to claim that Esther was mine. And if that's the case, if that's what everybody was suggesting, so it has to be that Esther actually found favor in the eyes of everyone, if that's how people speak. So the second opinion, the second proof is also something that the author could have deduced. That Rabbi Meir says, that is probably going according to what Rabbi Chia bar Abba explained. Bigtan v'Teresh, shne tarshim hayu. These two people, Bigtan and Teresh, they were from the city of Tarshish. And how did they speak? The people from Tarshish, they spoke a different language than the people in Shushan. So therefore, what language did they speak? They spoke Tarshishai. Since they spoke Tarshishai, Mordechai is a member of the Sanhedrin. The members of the Sanhedrin were required to know all 70 languages. So therefore, Mordechai, so the fact that Rabbi Meir understood that he knew what they said is not all that strange. Why? Since they came from another country, the likelihood is that they would have been able to discuss their plot directly in front of him. Otherwise, if they're from Shushan and they can't speak in front of him, they must have made the plot behind closed doors, being careful not to let him know. In which case, it would have to be that the only way that Mordechai could have known was through Ruach HaKodesh. But since Rabbi Chia bar Abba explained that they spoke in Tarshishai in front of him, confident that he would not know that language, so therefore, again, that's not a proof. That Rabbi Yossi bar Miskas, that Rabbi Yodi, that's Yossi bar Miskas that said, Babiza lo shalchu et yadam, that they didn't, and none of them, laid their hands on any of the spoils of the war. Dilma pristiki shidur. Maybe at the time they sent out messengers to each one of those places, and they came back and they reported, you know what, guys? All the people are dead, and all the spoils completely intact. No one has made a run on the bank. Sorry, I couldn't help myself. The Gemara continues. So therefore, Shmuel's proof is superior. Why? Because there's no way to knock out Shmuel's proof, Kimu v'kibilu, that we learn that Kimu means that in Shamayim they agreed with what was going on. That can't be unless it was Ruach HaKodesh. The Gemara continues, Shmuel vade let lepircha. But Shmuel's, what he said, you can't knock that out. Why? How could they be talking about what was going on in Shamayim? Amar Ravina, Hayu da Amri Inchi. This is what people say. Tava achada pilpalta charifta mimile tzani kari. Better you have one pepper that's super sharp and spicy, mimile tzani kari, than an entire basket of a bland fruit like melon. Now, let's just hit pause for 1 second. Shmuel is an Amorah. These were Tanaim. The fact that Shmuel would say that I would have said something better than them is already hard enough for us to handle. Now the Gemara comes and pours salt in the wound. Yeah, this guy is sharp pepper. I don't know. Melon. The answer is no, it's not what it's saying. It's not saying that he was better than them. What he's saying is that imagine you introduced one sharp pepper into all 60 melons. What would you taste if you mixed hot pepper into a thing? The thing that's going to jump out at you when something it's a very sharp taste, is that it overpowers something. Not that the melons are bad, right? But it's tavachada pilpilta with regards to the impact that it makes and the flavor that it leaves. Okay? Now, I always thought to myself also that one of the only things that you can eat that stays in your mouth way after you ate it, you eat a melon, you swallow, you taste it, good. You swallow it, gone. Eat a hot pepper. Swallow it. What happens? Stays. So, although each of them offered a proof, what happens after we analyzed it? We said, okay, maybe you could say like this. Doesn't mean it was a bad proof, but maybe you could say like this. With Shmuel, after his proof was said, it doesn't go away, it stays, because we can't knock out his proof. So that maybe the second understanding as to what Ravina was saying about Shmuel and the Tanaim. Rabbi Yosef Amameacha. Rabbi Yosef says, right now, let's just finish this. We're almost done. Rabbi Yosef Amameacha. Rabbi Yosef says from here, Rabbi Yosef says that the days of Purim would never leave the Jewish people. How can he possibly know what would happen? Maybe the days of Purim would leave the Jewish people in 100 years, and then the Megillah would look like a farce. The answer is, it was said, Ruach HaKodesh, telling them that it would still be around. Now, I don't know how big of a proof that is, because you introduce a holiday where you get drunk, party, send people gifts. You kind of think that that's one that's going to stick around. I wouldn't have bet on Yom Kippur, though. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Omer. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says, Me'acha, from here, V'zichram lo yasuf mizaram. We will never forget the people or those story. How could they possibly know that we would never forget the story? In order to be able to know that, you'd have to be aided by divine inspiration. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen. Amen. Hazak Baruch.